Hey everyone, welcome back to the stream. This is Josh Justice, aka Coding It Wrong, and I want to talk about the name real quick. I often joke that maybe you think I'm coding it wrong after you watch me code for a little while, but there's something serious to that as well. My mentality when it comes to sharing stuff like this stream and content I create is you don't have to agree with me. If we learn something through checking stuff out together, and if you get some benefit from it, that's totally fine if it's different than how I approach things. Different people, projects, organizations, technologies are different, and there's not just one way to do it. But I hope you get some benefit out of our time together, regardless of if you think I'm coding it wrong. So with that said, I want to get straight into our topic for today. So a few weeks ago, Mr. Khan from my Discord group raised a great topic, brought up the role-based queries that are available in React Native and asked about using those for testing. So I did some exploration. I've also got a workshop coming up. I guess I could pop up that slide. I wasn't going to, but I have some workshops coming up this fall if anyone wants to join up. Most of them are virtual. So we're talking about Expo Web to build out Expo Web apps like we've done on the stream. React Native testing library like we've been streaming about and talking about lately. Also React testing library in Cypress on the web. So if you go to codingitrong.com/speaking, you can find out more about all of these. And join up. But so the point is, while I was getting ready for my React Native testing library workshop, I looked into those ByRole query recommendations that Mr. Khan had and tried to find out the state of them. How do you use them? How recommended are they? So I wanted to walk through that real quick. I've found some information just on GitHub issues in the last week or two about the ByRole queries in React Native testing library. And we're also going to talk about how they work, compare with the web, and give them a try. I've only used them just a little bit, so we're going to be exploring and learning together to see how they work. And probably I'll leave at least some in place in my open source app, just so I learn about them as they go. So with that said, let's jump in. Let's get that desktop up. Where's my desktop at? There we go. All right. This is my app we've seen a number of times on the stream, Surely, an Expo app for mobile and for web. And but let's go take a look at the docs and find out about that. All right, we got React Native testing library here. And on the page about queries for the different options for how to get elements, we have ByRole as one of the options. So let's see what it is first. It returns a React test instance, which lets you get an element, of course, with a matching accessibility role prop. And the example they give here is screen get ByRole button. Okay, you're getting a button. Well, let's find out more. Let's look up accessibility role prop. So if we check that out in the React Native docs here, accessibility role, and where are we anyways? I just Googled this. Touchable without feedback. Probably there's more than one place that there's accessibility role. Let me search for that. I don't think that's specific to that element. So text has an accessibility role, view has an accessibility role. This is under accessibility API updates. Research and live. The new property accessibility role is used to tell TalkBack or VoiceOver the role of a UI element. Here's some of the values. I think these actually change. But yeah, let's take a look. Touchable without feedback. I think that's a base touch thing, but we do have pressable API. Let me stumble through here a little bit. Accessible role. That's not shown there. That's interesting. Well, maybe there's something inconsistent here, but regardless, let's take a look at what the docs say here about accessibility role. At least on touchable without feedback, it communicates the purpose of a component to the user of an assistive technology. And assistive technologies might include screen readers. So if someone is blind or otherwise visually impaired, the screen reader software like VoiceOver on iOS and on Mac will read out to them what's going on. And this will help describe to them verbally what it is. So you could say it's a button. You could say it's a link, which kind of functions differently. You could say it's for searching, so that's different than a text field. Image button header. Okay, so functionality wise, oh, I see. I understand that I've just selected a header. Summary, alert, checkbox, menu, list of tabs. I think there was a question I had about list item that was kind of confusing. Well, that's not listed there. Okay, so we'll see. But so these are different concepts, and you can sort of get a sense of the role here. What role does this element play on the page? So we can use these to get an element by the role. Okay, makes sense so far. So we'll give this a try in a bit, but let's understand whether to prioritize these, how much to prioritize these. So if you go to testinglibrary.com, the overarching testing library website that has many of these different tools, you'll see this guiding principles page, and you'll often be linked to here. The more your tests resemble the way your software is used, the more confidence they can give you. One of the ways this extends to is the recommended selectors used for finding elements. Try to write tests that closely resemble how your web pages are used. Cool, okay, so that's a principle in general. Now let's go over to the queries document here. This is for general testing library, apart from React or React Native. And it says, with this in mind, with the guiding principles in mind, we recommend this order of priority. First, queries accessible to everyone. They reflect the experience of visual and mouse users, as well as those that use assistive technology. I had some notes here. Let me pull these up. Where did those notes go? Yeah. So what this means is that these test approaches will make sure that your element is accessible and visible and interactable to people who are visual with and using the mouse. And it's also interactable and visible to someone who uses assistive technology. It's both and, not one or the other. So in addition to having your test just make sure that your component works, it also makes sure that it's usable by both. And this is great because it can be hard to remember to test with a screen reader as well as test using visual approaches as well. So get by role says this can be used to query every element that is exposed in the accessibility tree. And then some other options in there. There's not much you can't get with this. If you can't, it's possible your UI is inaccessible. And they mention a name option and a link to a list of roles. And this is actually a web document, so we're starting to get into some of the web versus mobile difference here. Okay, so as the number one option, they recommend using get by role. So that's a good recommendation. Other stuff like get by label text and get by text is lower down. They say, non-interactive elements. But get by role is recommended. And so this was Mr. Khan's question, like, should we use get by role in React Native as well? Let's take a look at why, for real quick, as why get by role is recommended. So this is a blog post recommended to me, and Mache from the React Native testing library team, one of the maintainers, recommended this to me in their Discord, as well as it's linked to from some GitHub issues. So, and it's a great blog post, Common Mistakes with React Testing Library. I'm going to post this one in the chat in case anyone's interested, just because there's a lot of really great stuff in there. A mistake would be not using ByRole most of the time. So we should use it most of the time. So let's understand that. In recent versions, it says, speaking of accessibility, let me make that text a little bit bigger. In recent versions, the ByRole queries have been seriously improved, primarily thanks to the great work by Sebastian Silberman. Great. They're now the number one recommended approach to query your component's output. So they used to not be the number one recommendation, but then they became so given these improvements. So let's see the features that make it recommended. The name option allows you to query elements by their accessible name, which is what screen readers will read for the element. So that's cool. So some details I won't get into here, but you can look for a button and then look for the name. And this ensures that this is a name that's visible and is also accessible. What else? One reason people don't use ByRole queries is because they're not familiar with the implicit roles placed on elements. And this is the thing that's important to realize. Like, there's a learning curve involved with learning to use the ByRole queries. But if you're looking to make your app more accessible, more usable by a broader range of people, which is good ethically as well as good for business, this can be a low-effort way to start to get used to accessibility. And you'll get feedback right away because your test will fail if it doesn't have the appropriate role, if it doesn't have the role that you're asking for. So learning a bit about roles is a good idea, and it's a good use of time. Let's see. Note we didn't have to add the role equals button to our button for it to have the role of button. That's an implicit role. Okay, cool. So that's some of the reasons that ByRole is beneficial. So now let's take a look at the React Native testing library document, How Should I Query? And in the same way, they're pointing back to the guiding principles and saying the test should resemble how users interact with your code. And then here's the recommended order of priority. Again, queries that reflect the experience of visual users as well as those that use assistive technology. But for React Native testing library, get by text is the number one recommendation. And it literally says this is the number one method. So great. Get by display value, placeholder, label text. There's some accessibility stuff. And then down under section 2, near the end, just above the dreaded get by test ID that's not recommended, is get by role. And this says this can be used to query every element that is exposed in the accessibility tree as a role, like buttons or images. So this is an inconsistency. Why is getByRole the #1 recommendation on testinglibrary.com and down near the bottom on a React Native testing library? One reason that there's a difference is that although React Native testing library falls under the testing library umbrella, most of the testing libraries are web-based. And they use DOM under the hood and stuff like that. And whereas React Native is a separate implementation and doesn't share a lot, in my understanding. So things can be different. Let's try to find out and understand what can be different. So this is the issue that I just ran across recently that was really insightful. This is an issue opened by Maciej to let's take a look at him. He's so cool. I got to meet him at React Native EU. What a great guy. Thank you for all your help, Maciej, on getting me up to speed on things. Update the recommended queries doc. So after merging this story, we should revisit our how should I query document and update the recommended queries. Let's see what that was. I forgot to click that one open. Add support for ByRole with name. So this was merged 12 days ago, and I think it was released in version 11.2 of RNTL. Okay, well, this is one of the things where they just link back to the issue to talk about it. GetByRole should accept the second argument to refine query as in React testing library. Should be able to query a button element as follows: GetByRole button with a name. At present time, this is impossible, so I have to add redundant accessibility label props. Yeah, okay, so all right, so before this was merged, just 12 days ago, you couldn't get ByRole with a name. And so that is significantly limiting. Get ByRole button, but if you had more than one button, you couldn't get it. And that's not even the most expressive in your test as far as saying, I want to get ByRole button. So that makes sense that was very limiting until this was added in. Now you can say, which button am I looking for? And you're confirming the visible name and everything like that, the accessible name. So how do they want to update the recommended queries doc? Maciej is recommending we could put ByRole at the top, and of course he's referencing that blog post as far as following that guidance. So ByRole will be bumped up to the top. So that would be a major change. And the idea is that based on the new functionality, just like testing library is saying, based on functionality available in ByRole, if it's not limiting, if it's really useful, there's a big accessibility benefit to using it. So some of the other comments here, though, are important. I'm especially curious whether ByRole is ready to be promoted as primary query, or should we implement implicit roles for RN views first? So let's take a look at implicit roles. All right, so this is implicit roles here. ByRole queries don't find an element that don't have an explicitly set accessibility role prop. That might be a double negative. I can't quite follow that on the stream. Let's find out. They're not queryable if you don't set the accessibility role prop. So should pressable be button by default? So this is interesting. I think we'll be able to see this in a minute. Basically, if you just use a pressable, it is not found as a button. Whereas in the blog post here, we talk about on the web, you don't need to add role equals button for a button to have the role of button. So this is kind of a gap. This is maybe a usability challenge. Because iOS and Android, by default, I believe, treat a pressable as a button and will expose it accessibility-wise that way. So there's one feature gap that they're wondering and just trying to decide, is ByRole ready? The other one that's mentioned is down here, Augustin. I'm not sure if that's the right pronunciation. I apologize if not. We should add the support for the different accessibility states. So you can write getByRole button disabled true. And this person agrees that I feel without implicit roles, it'll be pretty confusing for people. So also you have this concept of accessibility states. So apparently these are some of the different states. I'm learning about these things as well, but disabled is a state, selected, checked, busy, expanded. So the idea here is that these are two different functionality needs for getByRole, and there's a question currently as to whether it's ready to be top recommended before those are in. So that is apparently still in discussion. But yeah. So my takeaway as far as my workshop is I'm holding off on recommending it and teaching getByRole as first until the how should I query document is updated. And then if it works for the examples, or I'll at least emphasize it there. But for now, we don't need to wait on that. I want to try out getByRole and the ByRole queries to get a feel for it in our code base, see how useful it is, which of these functionality things are a big challenge, and we can just kind of figure things out as we go there. So with that said, let's jump into the code, and I'm sure I'm going to be back and referencing these things as we go to try to learn. I've got one of my test files from Shirley up, the available screen for available to-dos, and I've narrowed it down to just the first test. So let's just run through our test suite, find some of our tests that are using other query methods, and we'll see if we can use ByRole and if it's helpful, if it benefits us, and if it's painful, challenging, maybe we'll learn something together. All right, here's my available spec. Let's go down to the first test here. When there is an error loading to-dos, it shows an error message. So here we mock out a call to the server. We render the available screen, and then I do find by text. An error occurred while loading to-dos. So that's confirming that that error message is shown to the user. So let's see what is available in get by role, how that could help us. And I say get by role, I always get confused. There's the first part, find or get or query, and then the second part, by text, by role, by label, etc. Oh, and I want to show, just so you can visualize this, let me show the error message. So I actually have to drill down into a child component. I removed duplication here, but it makes it a bit harder to teach. So if I hard code the error message instead, an error occurred while loading to-dos, I save, and the error message occurs at the top. It's text. It's red text. So red text, I'm remembering that even colors, someone might be colorblind, and so it's not clear what's going on, but maybe the position highlights to them that it's an error message. Interestingly, errors like this was something that was not built into React Native paper, which has a lot of other things built in. I guess that's not part of the material design spec. So I made it red to be sort of an error message. So this is what we're looking for. This is what we're expecting to be present here. So instead of find by text, I'm going to do by role. Find by role. And find, if you're familiar with React Native testing library, is something you can await. So you're waiting asynchronously for that to appear on the screen, and it gives us some period of time. So this is not the role, so let's hide that real quick. That's the text. So what is the role? What is the accessibility role that we would like an error message to have? Let's look through this list here. So alert jumped out at me earlier. I feel like it's an alert. I think that in accessibility, I'm newish to this. I built some professional projects where we had big focus on accessibility. And actually my current client, we have an accessibility expert. She's worked in accessibility for 20 years. I'm super excited to learn more from her on this project. That one's on the web. But I think from my limited experience that alert is a good role for this. Let's look through progress bar, switch tab, timer. Yeah, no, alert seems right to me. So let's say find by role alert. I'm going to try this first. I don't think we're going to stay with this, but let's just see if this passes. We got to switch back over to the test here. Unable to find an element with accessibility role alert. Okay, let's take a look at the code to see if that makes sense. To-do list screen, I happen to know is the component where it is. There's a lot of nesting. Or maybe it's to-do. Oh, it's to-do list. Pride comes before fall. List header. Okay, if there's an error message, there's a list header with this error message component. All right, let's see if LSP is going to help me. Yeah, error message. So this is just a text element from React Native paper. So that makes sense that there would not be anything like an alert role in any way because it had no way to do that. So let's add it ourselves. And let me see if LSP auto-completes that. Yeah, this looks like this is auto-completing the values for accessibility role. Always surprised in Sublime Text. Spin button. Yeah, that's coming up. So that's very helpful. So accessibility role alert. So my theory is that when we save this change, the test is going to pass. It does. Very cool. So let's think about what our test is asserting. Remember, it's not enough just to have a test passing. We want to know how specific it's being, whether it's asserting even on the right thing, but whether it's giving us full confidence. So this just confirms that when we have an error from the server, some kind of alert is shown on the screen, but it doesn't show any of the text. And in some testing circles, I've seen that approach being done. But in testing library circles, there's a real emphasis on the message, the text being shown, and the idea that that helps you test. That's what your user is looking for. And there is some coupling there where if your phrasing changes, you need to change the test. That hasn't honestly very often caused me any kind of pain, versus the benefit of confirming and making it clear in the test, this is what we're making sure is happening, is very helpful. So if all I could do is find by role alert, that would feel kind of limiting to me. Thankfully, this test here, this feature here, get by role should accept an argument to refine the query, including using name. That's really helpful, and this seems more valuable to me. So let's give this a try. We say an alert with the name, the accessibility name. An error occurred while loading to-dos. I'm not sure if this will pass. Let's see. We save. It does not. Unable to find an element with accessibility role alert. Now, one thing I've noticed, by the way, and we'll confirm this in a minute, I think it's a little different than that. I think it's saying you can't find an element that matches all of these criteria. So it may be that an alert is found, and I think it is. It may just be the name that's not being matched. They were using a regular expression here, so let's try that. Maybe without the case insensitive. Let's save and test it. No, not found. Let me just try smaller and case insensitive and see. Able to find an element. Now I'm wondering, have I actually pulled up the updated the dependency correctly? React Native testing library React Native 11.2. Okay. So interesting. This isn't being matched. I think I've seen this work for buttons in the past. Maybe there's something about alert that it doesn't, but let's take a look and see. It is text, and it's looking for text underneath it. I wonder if the fact that it is text is causing a problem. Let's take a look at the docs here to see. So get by role. Name, submit, name. That's just directly in the button. Find all. Okay, this is getting the implementation details, so that's not so helpful. And this isn't directly listed here. Oh, here we go. Options, name. Finds an element with given accessibility role and accessible name, equivalent to by text or by label text query. Okay, so this is a very helpful summary. It's supposed to be equivalent to the by text, and there's supposed to be that text in there. So, but find by role alert without the name is passing, right? It is. And let me see if that text works. Await screen find by text. This is not dramatized, by the way. I don't know what's going on here. So let's find out. So if I just look for the text itself, it does pass. And let me comment out the passing version of find by role as well, or uncomment it. This can be good for learning purposes. Find by role alert also passes. But find by role alert, an error occurred while loading to-dos, fails. So that is surprising. So I think what we should do is move on, because I thought that I had seen this working with a button. Let me leave it just in this work in progress state. And I'm going to find a test that is actually looking for a button. And then we'll see. Maybe a button with text underneath it behaves differently. Maybe we found a bug or an enhancement we could do. So let's take a look here. This is a message. Displays to-dos from the server. Okay. Find by text. This is all text elements, so I worry that we'd run into the same problem. Oh, adding. That could be a good one. Because we have submit editing. Oh, well, that's interesting. Because there's an enter key. There's not a button there. Okay, so this screen is not going to be a good option for that. Let's go into to-do detail and see if there's some good button pressing in there. When there's an error loading the to-do, etc., etc. When the to-do is available, it displays completing the to-do. It allows completing the to-do. Fire event press and the complete button. Cool. So let's do .only there. Let's go to do detail. And while I'm waiting on this, I want to say thanks to everyone who's watching live. I see Vishal in the chat. Thanks for saying hi. And anyone checking this video out on YouTube later, thanks for joining in. And in the stream chat or in the comments in the YouTube video, please chime in with questions, comments. I would love to hear from you. All right, we're running to-do detail. I'm going to save this again. Want to just narrow down to the allows completing the to-do test. That's passing. Oh, was it the fact that I hard-coded that? Was that the problem? I just remembered that. I messed up my tests. Let's go back and see if that was the problem. Try to make things easier, and look what I've done. To-do list screen. Yes, let's get rid of this. All right, let's see. That might have been the issue, but I would not be surprised if that was not the issue. Unable to find it. Nope, that was not the issue, but we are at a more realistic place. So that's fine. We're going to go back over to that. Detail test. Oh. To-do detail test. We're testing the allows completing the to-do. And I'll show you where this is without hacking the code. And you click in here, and there's a complete button. Clicking on the complete button, and then it's marked as complete. Yeah. So let's check out our test for that. All right, so we mock out the server to reply with success when we patch, when we make an update to there. Then we press the complete button. So let me just see when I comment this out and make sure the test fails. It should, because we're not pressing the complete button. Fails. Yeah, the method is never called. All right, so let's try fire event press await screen find by, and find by is here because the to-do is loading asynchronously. Roll button. I think there's probably more than one button, so let's save this and see. Errors. Found multiple elements with accessibility roll button. Cool. It seems like it is finding them, which is helpful, even though I didn't add that button roll. I wonder if React Native Paper might be helping us there, actually. All right, so let's try that name scoping. Name complete case insensitive. See if that works. It should find just one complete button. It passes. Okay, great. Very nice. All right, so let's test something out here. Say, oh, that's not going to work. X complete. So I want to make sure that the test fails if it's actually not found. So there's no button marked X complete. So let's save that and make sure that the test fails. And it does. And again, the error message here, unable to find an element with accessibility role button. It's not actually what's happening. It's saying I'm unable to find this element with accessibility role button and with all these other attributes. But okay, this is good to learn. This code is in progress. This is a React Native. This is blazing new ground in this world. So let me put this back. So find by role button with name complete. I'm just out of curiosity, let me see if I can say just the string complete there, if that will work in this case. It does. And I would assume if I say completa, it fails because that's misspelled. Cool. Well, putting in a string when a string can match seems straightforward, and that seems fine to me, unless I find later that it becomes fragile. So that's great. So I wonder, this is an interesting thing about going through React Native Paper. I wonder if it's putting things into place that make this work better, that when I'm just using text directly, makes it not work. We could try something with that error, but let's go on to other cases and see what happens. Let's keep going through this file and just see what we run across. I like this. I think it seems better, instead of just saying click something that says complete on the screen, instead click a button that says complete. That seems more fragile. Maybe you'd have complete as a header somewhere on the screen. And so it's more robust and kind of indicates we're looking for a button named complete. Seems pretty clear. All right, so let's see other places in this test where stuff like this might be found. Places that we can try out a role query. We'll look for a few in here. Maybe we'll look for another file. Shows a message when there's an error completing the to-do. Let me just go ahead and copy and paste that because that can be nice for consistency. Deleting the to-do. Allows deleting the to-do. All right, let me put this delete button. Let's save. I would expect, since they're all implemented the same, I expect these would all be found. Okay, this is green. All right, keep looking. We're checking that navigation happened. We're gonna delete. Deferring the to-do. Okay, so defer. Ooh, and we have a test ID here, so this actually might help, but I think I remember why I used a test ID there. All right, so this is all passing so far. So let's take a look at this defer case. Allows deferring the to-do by 1 day. So one of the reasons that I remember using test IDs here is that depending on the day the test is run, a different day of the week shows up on the button. So it's difficult to get the full day. And in tests of various kinds, you can mock out the current day. And it's something that can be done at times, but it can be cumbersome. And so sometimes I just don't want to deal with that. And sometimes I just want to have something that's robust. But I'm thinking now that there's other ways. I realized I didn't remember it at the time, but there are other ways to get elements of the screen by partial text matches. But I think especially that regular expression as a part of find by role will work here as well. We can just get 1 day, no problem. Ben Jennison asks if I'm a cinnamon roll. I feel a pun coming here, hopefully an appropriate one. I am not a cinnamon roll. Why do you ask? All right, let's continue on here, and we'll see what answer we get. So let's try clicking a button with a name of 1 day. I'll make it lowercase. Okay, yeah, that was an inappropriate chat, so we're not going to be repeating the answer to that on here. I don't know how to moderate chats. We're going to be silent here while we moderate somebody. Hopefully this person keeps it under control, and then if not, we'll take more of a pause on the stream to handle it. All right, so I think finding a button with the name 1 day is going to be robust, is in fact going to pass. Let's see. It does. Now let's just make sure it fails if the button can't be found. 999 day. Unable to find element with text. All right. Cool. So this is great. Actually, we already don't need a test ID. Let me remove that test ID, actually, because that would be great to not be using that. Actions, defer actions. Defer 1 day button. I'll bet you we can remove that. So that's a good accessibility benefit. Now we're making sure that I find a button with the right label. And there were other ways I could have done it in before, but the point is it has helped me to make things in a better direction. Okay, it looks like other things were relying on the defer 1 day button. So we'll come back to that. In terms of making changes, it's good to keep things on green, and because once you go to red, it can be hard to come back from there. All right, let's update some more tests. I'll bet you we have one for each of these. Shows an error message when this happens. When to-do is completed. Oh, this is, okay, so this is different things here. I think I might not have tests for the 2 days and 3 day cases. I guess it was sufficient for me to have the one because I know they're kind of wired up in the same way. This wasn't test driven. This was done test after, and I was just making judgment calls, and I'm comfortable with that. I test drive sometimes. I just test just enough other times. When the to-do is deleted, I know you won't be able to see probably the scrolling quite so much. Oh, there's some screen find by things. We'll come back to that in a second. But let's update all the buttons first, because I think that's going to be helpful. Undelete. I think we are going to be able to get rid of those test IDs. Let's see if all the tests are passing. They are. So now let's try getting rid of defer 1 day button. This is definitely a change I'm going to want to keep in the code base. That's great. Defer 2 days button. I'm going to run across the whole test suite just to make sure there's nothing else testing these. Test ID. Is anyone using test ID in this file anymore? I think it's gone. Oh, cancel defer button. Well, let's save right now and see. passes. Let's just see if cancel defer button. Probably that's used somewhere. Oh, no, I guess I put test IDs in just so that all of them would be there. But let's just remove the possibility. Let's just say, let's not add test IDs in. Let's find another way to test. I'm going to run the whole suite just to make sure, because I do have these deep tests. Other things might be hitting the same thing, but nope. That worked out great. So let's go back to do detail. New tab with current profile. Let's commit these changes because these are good. ByRole. All right, so that did not work well enough for us. Let's commit all these changes. Okay, so this is update to do detail to use ByRole for button tests. Great. So, but I think I saw something else in this test. Screen dot. Find by text. Okay, so yeah, we know about those error messages. Find by text, query by text. Why don't I try another one on here? Maybe not an error message. Maybe there's something unique about that. Yeah, we're learning by trying different things. Oh, here we go. Here's another button. Retry is probably a button. Let's try it. It might not. Yeah, I don't think I used an icon or anything there. I think I did use just a text button. So this might very well work. Let me just comment this out to make sure that's actually needed for the test, that it breaks something if that's not working. It does, so that's great. We can just include that in the same commit. Let's just look for all fire event presses in here. And make sure they're all roll button. Because going back to the benefit, one of the benefits of this to accessibility is this is going to ensure that any buttons on the screen are described as buttons to someone using a screen reader. So that's a benefit for them. ByRole, find ByRole. Okay, cool. All right, so we're just going to include that in a previous commit. All right, so that's included. So let's find some text on here that we can look for that's not an error message. This is looking for the name. Okay, great. So let's go to here, only. Clears the error upon a successful retry. So we're looking for attribute name. So await, screen, find by role. So what would the name be? So this is a name. So now, yeah, this is the next question. Is thinking about what role to use here. What role should we be looking for? So actually, interestingly, the name is clickable, at least as a visual user using a mouse or a finger. Well, visual user, you can tap on that to edit it. There's also an edit button. So what is the name? Is it a button? Does it function as a button? I'm not actually sure. Am I doing something weird with my states of things? I guess it's kind of a button. Header. Acts as a header for a content section. The title of a navigation bar. I guess that's not really a header. It's a field. Yeah, so I'm not really sure. This is a data. As a developer, I think about a data field, and I don't know what that is. So actually, I'm gonna not change this one because I'm kind of uncertain. One of the things you can do is if you apply inappropriate accessibility attributes, you can make things harder for someone using a screen reader. I think that came into here. In the common mistakes, adding ARIA or role attributes incorrectly. Slapping accessibility attributes willy-willy is not only unnecessary, but it can confuse screen readers and their users. They should really only be used when the defaults, when semantic HTML doesn't satisfy your use case. So, adding the wrong role can cause a problem. And so this is an interesting accountability. I don't know what role to use for this. And I'm hesitant. I don't want to use the wrong thing. So let's not change that case. I don't want to make things worse. This is other text on the screen, checking for different things. Created by, deferred. What about these? Notes field and created and deferred dates. Can we use anything for those? It's not a search. Used when the element should be treated as static text that cannot change. I guess it's that as opposed to a text field. It's not an editable text field. So let's try that. Query by role. Well, let's first narrow down to here only. We got two tests here, so let's go remove the other one. Displays the to-do content. One case. Okay, so let's say query by role, text, name, to-do attributes, notes. So what this is adding, well, let's see if it passes first, and then we'll talk about what it's adding, so I'm not speculating. It fails. Expected not to be null, received null. Now this is something where the error output, I've been informed it's more recommended to use get by role. Let's change to be truthy, even though it's not fully satisfied, but I think this will get us a better error message. Unable to find an element with accessibility role text. Okay, so maybe that's not the default. And maybe they're not assuming that. This may be related to this. No, this. You have to have an explicitly set accessibility role prop, and defaults aren't happening. They aren't even mentioning about text, and if text should have text should have a default role. So let's try to explicitly set the text role here. The role of the text. Detail display. Notes. If there's notes, there's text. Let's see if I add accessibility role text here. Let's see what happens. Unable to find it. So here's something else I wanted to try. I was wondering before, what if I say view? View, accessibility role text. And we put text inside it. Maybe the text needs to be inside it, rightly or wrongly. And that passes. So what this is saying is, this lets you find an element like a view that has, oh, and please ignore that pressable. I'll have to come back to that in a second. Apparently that's pressable as well, which maybe causes a problem. But you need a surrounding element with accessibility role text that has a text element, a text component underneath that matches. So text does not automatically have that role, and it's not even letting me set that role directly on the text element. So I don't know if that's intentional or not. That could be something that I could ask about. I'm going to make some notes over here to find out. Marking on text directly, not working. Okay, intended. And then also I have a question is, what should text be that I can tap on to edit? So it's text you could tap on to edit. So that's the other thing here that makes me uncertain. It is text, but basically, well, this is a note. Let me save it, and just to show you, you can tap on the name, or you can tap on the note, and both of those make it editable. So I don't know what role to use there, so I'm again not going to add, that's two reasons I don't want to add the role there and change that test. So let me change that back. I should really comment these out so that I can get back to the original approach. All right, so this is still passing, so let's go on. So the dates here, these are not clickable, so these might work more okay. So let me query by role, text, name. I bet this is to be truthy. I bet you this is not going to pass because we probably need to add that role ourselves somewhere. Unable to find element with accessibility role text, so let's give that a try. So this is the created date. Where is that? event log. That's what I called that. Entry. What is an entry? Entry is text here. So let's say text role, accessibility role equals text. Let's run. It is not found. That's looping through. So let's try view. Accessibility role text. Maybe don't mind adding a view here. It's kind of a little bit weird. Maybe I'll put this in tentatively, but let's see if at least if it passes. So yeah, I have to add a wrapping view just to indicate that it's accessibility role text. That may be required regardless for just the way React Native exposes things to native. But let's take a look at the documentation of text. I'm remembering that we were looking at a specific element here. Let's see what roles text has. Accessibility role. So it says the text has accessibility role. Yeah. Treat it as having a specific role. See the accessibility guide for more information. We link to accessibility roles. All right, so this page, text. All right, this is maybe a better central place to go for the list of roles. So I'll put those in the notes on the YouTube video. So these are accessible, reachable, findable. Yeah. Text. Yeah, so this suggests that text should be able to have an accessibility role on it. So maybe that's something that's needed in the documents to specify that, or maybe that's something that is a bug. But that's something, I'm going to keep this in here. It's in my notes as well. I'm going to keep this in just because it's not too hard to change back, but it's kind of nice to have this option just to represent in the code this option. Let's change these other ones as well. So get by role, text, name. And I need to test something out, test something else on screen reader soon, so I can actually test these and see how they're read. And if they're read verbally okay, it's probably a good idea to do in general. And while I'm at it, I'm going to say here, query, change this one, get by text to be truthy. All right, that's passing. I don't think I want to, I mean, there's so much text on here all the way through this file that I don't want to do that on the stream, but I will commit these changes just as an example that I can have. And it has something in the code base that I can play with in the future. All right, note to the error message. Yes to the entry. Okay, update entry log entries to, oh, it's event log entries to have text. All right, so we've confirmed that those have text. So let's take a look at the other roles, and maybe one of these will inspire me for somewhere else in the app we can look for them. Adjustable alert. We weren't able to get alert working before. Let's get it going though by wrapping it. I mean, I think it's appropriate to wrap text for an alert with an alert. So let's do that. We've kind of learned or gotten a feel for things. This is an error message, and this was in the available test. Okay, let's go over to available. Passing, let's switch to, oh, this was weirder than that. Right, this was something where find by role alert passed, but name did not. Maybe name is looking for something that's nested. Role is visible, but name doesn't work. Just adding a note to myself here. So if we say view accessibility role alert, and then under there, there's the text. Maybe we can get rid of that test ID. We'll see. That'd be nice. Oh, I forgot to update the test first. Oh. All right, failed. Unable to find node on an unmounted component. That's interesting. Do not know what's going on there. Oh, an error occurred, an error message. Oh, I did not import view. Seems like you should import view. That would be a good idea. Great, that is found. And let's hard code that back in to check that visibly. To-do list screen. Just put in the error message. Still looks fine. That view doesn't make any difference to anything. So I don't mind that. This, even if maybe I'm doing something necessary, maybe I'm working around a current limitation that'll be fixed in the future, but this is allowing me to specify this error message is an alert, and that could very well improve the accessibility in VoiceOver as we try this out. So that is worth a little bit of extra nesting, even if it's temporary. Now I kind of want to see this test ID error message. Let's see where that is referenced. Only in a couple tests. Well, the one error message in the error message spec. So let's update the error message spec. See if we can get this working differently. It renders a provided error message and does not render any elements when the error message is falsy. Oh yeah, yeah, that's why I added that in. I think that was a previous stream because I didn't know what was happening there. So I think I might still need this test ID until I can figure something else out there. But I can improve this query by text and say query by role, alert, name, error message. And we can get. It passes. Great, so this provides some extra assurance that that alert is going on. So let's commit that. Maybe we can find some more commits to do. So we've added accessibility role alert. Test is more specific. Oh, we got some commented out stuff there. Let's remove the commented out stuff. Everything's still passing. Wait. Find by role. Change error message. Add alert role to error message. Cool. So let's see, to keep things consistent, let's see where else in tests we can improve that. An error. All right, this is in available spec. Let's remove the only an error. Find by role, find by role. Alert, name. One of the nice things about taking time to learn like this is you can run across things. You say, oh, this is easy to use from now on. Like I can use this when I didn't need an explicit requirement to do it, but now I can just easily reach for it. It can be helpful. Yeah. Let's see if there's errors in here as well. Oh, this is a mislabeled test. Let's do that. Shows a message. Shows a message. I'm not duplicating checking for errors in these because they're using the same component under the hood. All right, shows a message. So this is part of that same thing. Oh, it's good to clean things up as you go. Correct names of tests for messages that aren't errors. All right, we got 6 minutes. One more thing, I could have sworn that someone was talking to me about a list role, and these are list elements. Let me see if I can find a reference to that, because that would be good. List. List. Spin button, it's not a spin button. Tab list, it's not a list of tabs. Role list. See all 4 results. I think that was all 4 results. Button with opens a list of choices. Yeah, that's not that. Let's go to a search engine. React Native accessibility role list. List item? This seems just extremely familiar. List item. Let's go to Google. Usually DuckDuckGo is fine. Implement list and list item accessibility role extension. This is in the React Native Windows. Closed, like it merged. Proposal to add accessibility APIs for lists. This is open. So this is open. So there's not currently accessibility roles for lists. That is really interesting. I wonder how that affects the screen readers, because having lists is a pretty common thing. Oh, and this is opened in 2019. That's unfortunate. Wow. I mean, you know, I've heard differing views as far as how accessible React Native is, and this could be a sign that this is a significant gap. I feel like there was a React Native blog post about this recently. So let me take a look at this. Hermes 9 accessibility 2022. Disabled state not announced, position collection, text input error announcement, form field, backlog of reported issues to look for accessibility reported requests. Interesting. So yeah, I'm not actually sure. It seems like there is not a role for lists. So these things are available as roles, but other things are as not. So if something needs to have a list role, probably you can't query it. Can you just add it in? I'm not sure. Maybe that's passed through to the underlying UI, but I would expect probably not. But yeah, so there's some limitations there in terms of what's available for React Native accessibility. So what is the state of things? I did not have a need at this point to use, let me save this onto my personal notes because that's very helpful to know about. The list is not in, it seems. But other than that, the state of things. To summarize, again, how should I query in React Native Testing Library? They are not officially recommending get by role or ByRole queries as the top option. They said get by text. Part of it is just how many edge cases are people going to run across. So it seems to me that I'm probably still going to be using some by text queries in some places in my code. I'm going to follow the guidance of this issue. In fact, I'm going to follow this issue. How can I follow? Oh, I'm subscribed. Very nice. Maybe I'm subscribed to these ones as well. That one's closed. That one's open. I want to know about this one as well. This is something you can do. You can subscribe to issues to find out more about them in the future. But yeah, so I'm going to be following this issue to find out when that recommended queries doc updates. I want to affect my teaching resources that I use. And I'm going to use, this was an encouraging experience. I feel like for my button stuff that this was very helpful, and I'm going to be able to use that going forward. Now, I think part of that might be an artifact of the fact that I'm using React Native Paper and their setting accessibility role button, I think, on those buttons. If you're using a pressable directly, you're not going to be able to find the element unless you set the accessibility role prop explicitly. And I'm not sure if that's helpful. That might be kind of duplicative to the point of what Kent was saying in this blog post here. But I'm relying on React Native Paper, which is providing a lot of benefits there. So my takeaway is, this is a difference. This will make a difference because of us spending this hour together in my React Native code. I'm going to be using get by role in the future as I can. And I'm going to be keeping this list of accessibility roles handy to be able to use them. I am going to go and check this out on VoiceOver, though. I'm not going to go whole hog and put all this in a way that might actually make things less accessible for screen reader users. If I'm making no changes to the code, like in the case of buttons, yeah, I can use those queries just fine. But in the cases of where I added alert, I'm going to go into VoiceOver and check it out before and after to see what's read out to the user of VoiceOver to see if it's really an improvement. And I'm going to do that before I merge this PR in. Yeah, so, but so there, the end. That is the end of our exploration for now. I'm going to be doing more exploring on Get by Role, including for my workshop that's coming up, just to know what I can advise there. And as you've seen, I don't have all the answers. I'm learning as I go, and just like you are, all of us are. So let's take the opportunity to learn, but take 15 minutes, take 30 minutes, an hour to explore something later to learn about it. I'm glad that Mr. Khan prompted me and encouraged me to check this out, because I wouldn't have taken the time to learn these things otherwise and pass them along for you all to consider as well. So thanks for joining in on the stream. I appreciate it. I hope you had some fun. Hope you learned something and got excited to dive a bit more into accessibility. Yeah. We will be back next week. We're going to be doing some more testing. I haven't figured out exactly what it is. I think, let me see if I can check the list. What was it? It was Knock. Yes, Knock, the testing library for mocking API endpoints. Someone asked about my usage of Knock here, and I haven't actually done that on a stream. Separately from a stream, I found out about Knock and started using it and found that it was really useful for my use cases. So I think next time, for the next plan for October 11th, is that we're going to look at Knock, take a look at how it works. If I can find any of my tests that aren't using Knock yet, I'll pull some up and we can switch over to using it. But we'll walk through it and talk about the pros and cons and why it's my preference right now to use for API mocking. Probably talk about direct mocking of API libraries as well, because that's something I teach on a lot of occasions, to use just module mocks. So that's it. Oh, I was supposed to be showing a screen. I thought I was showing a screen. Here's a screen. Here's an example of a Knock test, or a test using the Knock library to mock an endpoint, just like we were saying as we went through the stream together today. And that's what we'll be showing next week on October 11th. So I hope you can join in. But with that, we're going to bring it to a close. Thanks so much. Have a good day, evening, early morning, wherever you are. And go to check out codingwrong.live to find out all my contact info, to find out more, to join in on the Discord where you can talk about these things, raise these questions. We can have these discussions asynchronously, and you can share ideas that we could potentially use for future streams or just asynchronous investigations. So thanks to Vishal for joining in. Glad you're here. Thanks to everybody who's others who may be listening in or checking out the recording later. And we'll catch you next time. See ya.